Hello class, this is Mr. Jose. I will be going through each of the drawings for week one to try and get everybody to the same page, give everybody same base level of knowledge for drawing each of the parts um, needed for week one and for the class as a whole. So I've got some input recorders on my screen that will highlight every time I press a key, or click the mouse button or scroll so that you can see what I'm doing. Let's see. So yeah, the first part that we're going to start off with is this part, this T-shaped looking object. It's a relatively simple one, only using lines at 90-degree angles, a center line, some relatively simple dimensions. And then again, as a reminder, at the bottom of each page is the units for each drawing. This will be important when we get to 3D models, since having incorrect units will mean that you'll have incorrect mass properties, and so that'll hamper your grade if you're not in the correct units. Okay. So here I am in SolidWorks, and to create a new drawing, I'm going to make a new part file, this one on the left. Okay. And then before I go further, one thing I want to point out is in SolidWorks 2025, it looks like it gives a menu with all the basics that you'll need. But for me, the tabs that I like to use are the Features tab for turning 2D sketches into 3D, the Sketch tab for drawing the 2D sketches in the first place, and then the Evaluate tab. The Evaluate tab for the measuring tool, and for the mass properties tool for 3D objects in the future. I mostly live in the Sketch tab, so here's where I make my new sketches, my smart dimensions, and then all the shapes that I can add to that. Okay. Drag this off. Okay. So over here on the left is a description of all of the objects available in the drawing. So we have our 3 planes, and then we have the origin point, which is the center of the entire drawing. And to start my sketch, I'm gonna, in the Sketch tab, hit the Sketch button, which opens up here on the left. It says select a plane on which to create a sketch for the entity. And so since we're only doing 2D sketches this week, it doesn't really matter. We just need any flat surface to draw a sketch on. And so for me, I'll pick the front plane. Let's see, move this off again. Okay. So we can see now the sketch has appeared as one of the objects in the drawing, and we are ready to sketch. Again, the origin has appeared. The origin is very useful for locking down a 2D drawing into a fixed point in space. And so you'll find that if you're underdefined, a lot of the times the last step you might need is to add a coincident between a point on your drawing and the origin itself to lock it in place. So let's draw this shape using the line tool. So again, in the Sketch tab, up here are my tools. I'm going to hit the line tool. It looks like it has a shortcut with L, but I don't like using those. So I click on the line tool, and I'm just going to draw that T shape using left clicks by doing a single left click, not dragging, just clicking and letting go. It lets me continually plop down lines connected to the last point that I let go from, and that's convenient for just drawing a general overall shape. And it doesn't have to be perfect, this is just the general form. We can always add constraints later. Just then I hit the escape key just out of habit, because anytime I want to go and do a new thing in my drawing, hitting the escape key lets me know that I'm in my default state and not accidentally in a tool that I don't intend to be in. Let's move this up a bit. Okay. Before I start dimensioning, again, I want to make sure that I have the right units, and so I'm going to look down here. Right now I'm in mmgs, millimeter gram seconds, and that matches the millimeters units on my drawing from my book. If I needed to switch to inches, this is where I would do it. It is a lot easier to switch conversions before you start dimensioning. So this is, once you finish your general form and before you start dimensioning, that is when you want to double check that you have the correct units. If not, just at the very start of the making the drawing. Okay, so hitting escape again. All right, so it looks like we're going to start, this top line here is 50 millimeters. And so I'm going to go up to the top left, hit Smart Dimension, and then I can either click on the line or I can click on the two lines that also define the top line. Either way, it makes the same dimension. Here, I click down, it brings up a prompt, and in that prompt I'm going to type 50 for 50 millimeters, and it defaults to the units of the drawing. I hit enter. Does that show up? I hit this enter. Okay. The first dimension that you plop down on a drawing rescales the rest of the drawing so that it matches. Afterwards, any additional drawings will manipulate the drawing to try and make everything work out. So before you plop the first dimension, that is when you want to fix your units. Otherwise, you might get into a sticky situation. So I mentioned in class that when I'm constraining a drawing, half the battle is the dimensions and half the battle is the relations. So I'm just going to keep dimensioning what I did just there to do it again. If I hold down right click, and you can see it highlighted, and I move my mouse a little bit, it brings up this wheel. If I move my mouse upwards even more, it brings up the smart dimensioning tool represented by that symbol, the two arrows with the two lines. If I bring it leftwards, it lets me select the line tool relatively quickly. If I bring it rightwards, it selects the circle tool, and if I bring it downwards, it brings the rectangle tool. So since I'm dimensioning right now, I'm holding right click and I'm dragging upwards, and the symbol appears next to my mouse cursor to show that I'm in the dimensioning tool right now. So I'm going to go biggest to smallest essentially, and add in 20 millimeters here. I'm just clicking on the line, 25 millimeters here, and then 5 millimeters up top. The last two are between these two lines. It says that this is supposed to be 10 millimeters, and then this is supposed to be 20 millimeters. This last dimension has shifted my drawing a little bit, and now it doesn't match the general form that I want to make. And so hitting escape so that I'm in the default state. What I like to do is whenever it messes up the general form, I just like to drag things back into shape, just so that if SolidWorks adds more constraints, it's more likely to add them in a way that I want it to, versus messing it up further. Okay. So if I look at this now, all the dimensions in my book are now here on the page, and so I probably want to move on to relations. Just looking at the object itself, if I look at this line and this line, they're offset when I want them to be on the same flat line. And so what I can do is, since these are the two objects that I want to add a relationship between, I want them to be flat, I will control click, and you can see it highlighted, select on both of them, and then that adds all the possible relationships that I can apply to the two of them. In this case, there's two options that would get me the result I want. If I make them horizontal, oh, never mind. looks like horizontal just adds them individually to each line. But I think if I did it for the endpoints, because they're already set as horizontal lines, if I select the 2 points instead and make those horizontal, it'll line them up. The safer option though, in this case, would be to hold down control, select both lines, and make them collinear. So this symbol means that it'll line them up and it'll connect them by this dotted line that isn't actually part of the drawing. Okay. So this looks relatively good. So I'm going to click and drag. It's mostly blue. So what I'm going to do next is constrain my object to the origin and see what is left that still has some wiggle room. So for me, I like keeping the origin as near to the center of something as possible, just by habit. And so if I hover over a line, it opens up the midpoint. I can left click on that line, hold control down, click on the origin, and now up here it shows the 2 points that I've selected under selected entities. And I want these 2 points to be right on top of each other, and that is done with the coincident tool. So I can see by doing that, it's locked down this bottom line, it's locked down this right line, and down here as well. These 2 lines are still blue, so I'm going to click and drag. It looks like I can shift it outwards, which is something I don't want. So I'm going to skew it a little bit so that I can know when it's fixed. In this case, I want these to be centered on my object vertically. And so what I'll do is I'll add a center line. Because whenever I want to center, I want to add something to center around that isn't part of the drawing. So a center line is a great tool for that, and it shows up as this dashed line. And then if I hold control down, I want to add a relationship between this line, the second line, and then the line that I want to mirror around. So by clicking on all 3, it opens up the relations that I'm allowed to have. And in this case, I want to do the symmetric relation. Now this is locked down, and that looks pretty good. So only 2 lines left, and it's the same problem. This might be a good time to show. Let's see what happens if I do this. Oh, it fixes it. Okay, so I guess SolidWorks knows that it wants the 2 solid lines around the dashed line. So selecting the 2 again, and then selecting this has centered the 2 lines around the object. I can see down here on the bottom right that my object is fully defined, and so this part is complete. This is the exact amount of relationships and dimensions that I want. I don't want to be adding more dimensions. If I try and add this, it talks about making the sketch overdefined, and so it's extra information that I don't actually need for someone else to recreate this drawing. And so if I have this grayed out one, I want to delete it. And if I can't make it, then that means that there's something else in my drawing that I have to delete in order to put in the constraint that I want. So a lot of the time it's trial and error. For you just want to kind of start deleting things. So let's say that I absolutely needed this 25. So what I'll do is, one more time, I'll make it driving so that it leaves the conflict in. I see that a bunch of it is yellow, and I'll just systematically work my way inside out, trying to get rid of whatever I think might be over defining it. In this case, I can tell already that this one over here is the thing I want to delete, but possibly, maybe if I make them not symmetric, let's hit escape. Forgot to hit escape. So if I click on this and I delete this because it's yellow, nope, that wasn't the problem. Maybe I want to delete this horizontal line, see what that does. No, that wasn't it, or that was vertical. Eventually I'll find out that the thing I needed to delete was that, and then I can recreate the relations that I deleted. But that intuition is something that you build as you create more parts. Okay, so that's it for part 1. Let's see, ET260. Let's make semester 2. And so I'm making sure to save just so I can access it later. Make a new folder, week 1, and in that we'll call this sketch 1 solid part. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of this drawing, and I'm going to hit new part, and now we're going to be working on drawing number 2, which is this girder looking thing, cinder block. Okay, so again I'm going to hit sketch on the top left, I'm going to hit front plane, and then I'm going to draw the general form of the object. That's not how to intersect the origin, so I'm going to do the shortcut, right click, drag left, so that I'm in my line tool. And then I'm going to draw that cinder block looking shape. And then it had a rectangle in the middle, so I'm going to right click, or I can select up top the rectangle tool, but I'm going to right click, drag downwards, and then I can quickly sketch a rectangle. Let's start off by adding a center line because it's always useful, and I can already tell that this part should be symmetrical, and I just want a vertical line, which you can see next to the pencil has popped up as the yellow vertical icon whenever it's going to add the vertical constraint to this line. Okay, so let's see, maybe this time we'll start by adding relations instead of dimensions first. So I'm going to hover over this. I'm going to lock this eye shape down to the origin to start. So that's control clicking on both of them, hitting coincident. I'm going to drag everything so that's generally correct, just so that I can have a higher chance of my relation succeeding. And I can see what's off skewed. So one thing that I want to fix is I want these two to be in line with each other. So I'm selecting both of those with control clicking, and I can see my selected entities up here on the left, and I'm going to hit collinear. I'm going to do that again for the other side. If I drag this, I need to make this one collinear with this line over here. So I'll be doing that as well. That skewed this guy, so these two need to be collinear as well. Let's see. That's fine because I'll be constrained with a dimension, but I do want to make these symmetrical around the center line. So I'm gonna select, let's see, yeah. So it looks like these drag around already, likely because I put the origin at the midpoint. So, but this box needs to be symmetrical. So I'm going to select, symmetric, and now it'll grow left and right. I think this is a good point to start dimensioning. So going from the outside in, I'm going to make this one at the top 80 millimeters. The space between this line and this line, oops, I'm going to go back into my dimension tool. Between this line and this line is 10 millimeters. The dimension for this line here is 30. The dimension for this line here is 20. So now that's getting kind of close. So I'm going to move it back up so that it looks closer. it looks like I'm going to need to dimension up here first. So this has to be 10. This one has to be 30. So that's messed it up as well. So I'm gonna click it, I'm gonna drag it so that's closer to my shape again. It looks like this line needs some symmetry with this one, so I'm gonna control click on these. I have my 3 lines selected, they're all light blue. These are the 3 things that I want to relate, so everything's good for me to hit symmetric. Let's see, what else? This one can move up and down. It looks like there's a 15 millimeter dimension between here and there. So adding that locks it in. Let's see, 1030. This one needs to be defined as 10 still. And my object's fully defined. So that's part 2. I'm gonna save it. Sketch 2 in the same folder. Now we can move on to part 3. So part 3 looks like this. Let's see, it's kind of like a key. I can see it's still millimeters. So let's get started. Let's see. Hit new part. Hit sketch in my sketch tab. Hit front plane. Okay. So again, we're going to start with the general form. I'm going to pick this corner here to be the origin, just arbitrarily. So from the origin, I'm just going to click. I'm going to go left, down, left again. I'm going to click here, click to the corner, click downwards. Then it goes all the way down here, over to the right. And then it'll turn into an arc. But before that, there's one more line that I can add right here. I'm gonna line this up just to make it a little bit easier on myself. And you can tell it's lined up by the dotted line that appears. Okay. Then I'll use the circle tool. Let's see, or no. So instead I'm going to make a 3-point arc. So if I click on the arc tool, the arc types can be chosen from the drop down, or they can be chosen from the icons over here. The icons tell you the order of the clicks, like what each click means. So for a 3-point arc, the first click is on the left point of the arc, the second click is on the right point, and then the third click defines how the radius of the circle. Whereas for tangent arc only uses 2 clicks, and it makes an arc that is tangent with one of the lines that it's connected to. And then there is center point arc, which the first click is the center of the object of where you're placing it. Then the second click is on the left side, and then the third click is on the right side. Since I don't have a center point here, I'm going to click on, what is this, 3-point arc. I'm going to click on the left point of the arc, I'm going to click on the right point of the arc, and I'm going to click just wherever I want to make the arc. You can see the plus sign that moves along with the arc a little bit below it. That is the center point of your arc. It looks like the center point should be in line with the left side and the right side of the circle. And so I'm going to put the center point where it makes this dotted line and click. This is closed my object, and so it's all shaded. There's a second circle on the same center point, so I'm going to hit the circle tool up here, or I could hold right click and drag to the right. I'm going to click on the center point, and then I'm going to plop down a circle. And so now the general form of my object has been completed. And so let's start adding some dimensions. Because this is not a complete circle, when I plop this dimension down, it has the R symbol to indicate that it's a radius. As you know from math, the radius is from the center point of the circle to the edge, that distance, versus the diameter, which is from the edge to the other edge of the circle, going through the center point. So the radius is half the diameter. So when I plop this down, if I look at my drawing, this is saying it's 60 millimeters diameter, which means that half of that is 30 millimeters radius. So I'm going to plop down 30. And so if I want this to look the same as the book, let me hit escape a bunch. If I want this to look the same as the book, I can double click, or sorry, it was just low. I can single click on the dimension. It brings up the dimension window on the left, and I can go to liters, and over in liters, it gives me the different types of displays of the dimension. And here I want to go from the radius, which is this symbol, to the diameter, which is this symbol. And that's changed the symbol. It's doubled the millimeter to indicate that it's now talking about the diameter, but it's still the same information, so the drawing itself hasn't changed. So I'm gonna now dimension this circle, again using right click to quickly get into my smart dimension tool. I plop that down and it's 30 millimeters diameter, and so that's locked in. It looks like there's a couple center lines that we can use to help us. We'll definitely need this horizontal center line. So I'm going to drag this. I'm going to make sure I go through the center of the circle. Make sure it's horizontal. And then I'm going to dimension from that line to the bottom is 40 millimeters. You can see that's extended the bottom because the top is kind of locked in based on the size of this arc, as well as it being locked to the origin up here. So the SolidWorks figured the easiest way to make this 40 work was to extend the bottom. Speaking of the bottom, we know that this is 150 millimeters. And then just going around the circle, or around the drawing, this leftmost edge is 20 millimeters. The distance from this box to the top line is 5 millimeters. Over here, this little edge of the key is 35, and then the notch is 25 long. That has fully defined my sketch, and so I'm good to go on from this drawing. So I'm going to save that as sketch number 3. Hit exit, and we'll go on to sketch number 4. Okay, this is sketch number 4. Scrolling down, looks like this. The new thing will be the fillet, which is what this indicates, this symbol. The way you read this, R again is radius, 4 means it's millimeters, TYP I believe stands for typical, or maybe it's type. Let's look it up. Typical to all identical features. And so in this case, we can see the identical features to this curve will be this one over here, as well as this rounded edge and this rounded edge. Knowing which ones is kind of intuition. Sometimes you'll see it as R4 times 4 to indicate that there's 4 places, or you can see it times 4 PL as well. There's just many ways for a designer to indicate that they want a similar feature in multiple places on the drawing, and you'll just get familiar with those the more we go through this book. All right, so I think this one looks kind of like a clock. Let's see. So I mentioned in class that fillets are mostly cosmetic because it relates to like how when you're manufacturing the part, a lot of the times you'll use like a lathe or like a drill or something with a rounded edge, and so the fillet lets the machinist know that they don't need to have a hard corner, that they can use a tool with an appropriate diameter to create more of a rounded edge, which is a lot easier to make. So because it's cosmetic, when I draw the shape, I'm going to ignore the fillets entirely and make 90-degree angled lines, and then I'll add the fillets in afterwards. The last thing before I start is where am I putting the center point. A lot of the times I'll just go to wherever, if there's center lines on the drawing, I'll go to the intersection of those center lines and put the origin there. And so in this case, the center point around that is a circle, and then it's surrounded by an arc that it goes from 90 degrees around the arc. Oops, I wanted to do a center point arc. So I hit escape, hit center point arc. The center point, the first click is the center, the second click is the left side of the arc, the third side is the right side of the arc. From one of the endpoints of the arc, I'm just going to go down to the left, down to the right, up, all the way over to the right, down a bit, to the right again ignoring the fillets, and then making a closed object. So this is my general form. It's a little lopsided, that's okay. Remember, before I start dimensioning, I'm going to make sure I'm in millimeters. Let's add the center line, at least the vertical one, because we know that it's going to be symmetrical around the vertical line. And then let's start defining. So this outside one is 90. Again, it pops up as a radius because it's not a complete circle. Half of 90 is 45. So same info, but in talking about the radius instead of the diameter. I click on radius, I click on liters, I switch it over so that it matches my drawing, and now it says 90 millimeter diameter instead of 45 millimeter radius. Something that is also useful is if you don't want to do the math itself, you know it's radius, you know that the diameter is 90, so what you could do is put 90 in divided by 2, because you know that the radius is half the diameter, and since if you hit enter there, same thing, it pops up as radius 45. So I'm going to switch that back over to diameter and move on. So let's dimension this inner circle at 60 millimeter diameter. Let's see, let's put in this horizontal center line so that we can add the dimension related to that. Whoops. I'm just going to draw a horizontal line. I missed the origin, so this time I'm going to click on it, control click on the origin, hit coincident, and now it's lined up. It looks like this one didn't line up either, so I'm skipping ahead. I'll do that later, actually. So the distance between here and the bottom of the foot is 70. The distance between the top of the line and the bottom of the line is 20. That's messed up my object a little bit, so I'm going to hit escape, drag this down, drag this foot down to look a little bit more like my object. Then I'm going to go back into dimensioning. Dimension the bottom foot is 25. The distance between this leg and this leg is 200. Oops. I'll hit undo with Control Z, or the undo button up here, 200. Okay. Let's see, what else? The distance between the foot and the inside part of the leg here is 3 millimeters. Okay, that's good for now. We'll add in the fillets again at the end. So let's look at what needs to be constrained. So just going clockwise, I see that this point is blue. I drag it. It looks like it's not stopping at the halfway point of the circle. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on this line that I created, and I'm going to click coincident so that it intersects. Another thing I could do instead of that, if I didn't want to relate it to the line and I wanted to relate it to the center point, for example, I can click on those 2 points and hit horizontal. And so now they're horizontal to each other. Both options have locked in this line over here, which is what I wanted. Going over here, the next thing that's blue is this line. I click and I drag, and dragging one, offset drags the other one, and it's not in a way that it doesn't drag them both outwards. That tells me that these are not symmetrical, and so I'm going to control click on here, the line I want it to be symmetrical with, and then this, and then I'm going to hit symmetric. Now, at least now when I drag it, it drags this and the outside edge together. So likely what I want to add next is the symmetry for this inside line. Okay, and by doing that, it's locked in this outside line, which is what I wanted. So this line moves this whole foot up and down, but I know that the bottom of this foot needs to be in line with the bottom of this foot. So since that moved when I moved this line, I saw that, and look at the two, and I want to make them collinear. And that's what I needed to do to lock in this guy. Last one is this. Again, by moving it, I know I want this to be on the same line as this guy. And so if I make those two collinear, that has fully defined my object, and I'm good to go. Oh, no, I'm not. The last thing is the fillets. So up here at the top, on the bottom right, is the sketch fillet tool, the rounded edge. Here, so the fillet tool automatically adds a dimension and adds an equal relation for all fillets created with this tool using a single use of the tool. So here under parameters, I'm going to put that it's a 4 millimeter fillet. Then I'm going to select everywhere that I see a fillet in my drawing, which is here, 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 and here. And I can either click on the point to add the fillet, or I can click on 2 lines that join at a corner, and it'll put the fillet at the intersection of those 2 lines. So I can see my yellow previews look good. I hit OK, and now we're good. So let's save this as sketch 4. Okay, I'm going to drag this just so it's a little bit neater. Try and match the drawing. I just want clearness, like a clear amount of space between each measurement, as well as the arrows, so that I can clearly tell what it's pointing to. Lining stuff up is always nice. This looks pretty good, so let's move on. All right, new part. Okay, so next up is this guy, maybe like a spaceship looking thing. When I'm tackling this one, I'll probably put the center lines intersect here, so maybe I'll put the origin here, start with a circle, start with an arc. I'll skip these well, at the ends of the arc, I'll put in diagonal lines, go all the way around. The main thing to notice here is that this arc, this arc over here goes from, is a full 180 half circle, 180 degree half circle. So starts at like 90 degrees, goes all the way around 180 degrees, and goes straight down. Whereas here on this arc, it does not have that same shape. It looks like the arc starts somewhere around here, goes over here, and then switches to a diagonal line. So one thing that you'll want to be careful of is that you don't want to accidentally start the arc here and constrain it to your center line, because then that'll add information that is incorrect for the drawing and will mess up your dimensioning later. Okay, so let's see, we'll make a new sketch on the front plane. Let's add our center lines first this time. I'll hit escape. I mentioned this in class, but if you draw any line or any circle or any arc and it's a solid line, i.e. it's part of the drawing, if you click on that line over here on the right, there's the options box, and you can switch it from here to a for construction line or a center line. And this is great for making things that are references that aren't actually going to interfere with turning that sketch into a 3D object. So I said around the center point, I'm going to put the circle, and then I'm going to put an arc. So I'm going to pick center point arc because I know where the center of the arc is supposed to be. And then since I'm just doing the general form, I'm going to make sure that I don't have any extra of these dotted lines. And I'm just going to start over here and then put the endpoint around there. Okay, I'm going to zoom out and then zoom in on the left so that it's more, I have some more space to work with. And you can see the scroll wheel highlighting on the right side. So I'm going to click on line. I'm going to click on one of my points. It's a diagonal line. I don't really care where I put it. After the diagonal line is a horizontal line. I go upwards. I go rightwards. I want to switch to an arc here. So let's do a center point arc. And again, since it's 90 degrees between the other center point and the start of this leg, I'm just going to put my center point of this inside arc at the intersection of those two dotted lines to line it up, just save me some work in the future. And then I'm going to go until it's the endpoint is vertical with the starting point. Then I hit escape, I click on my line tool, and I go over to the left, up, to the right. You don't have to line these up because you can always line it up later. As long as the general form is correct, you can always add more information, more constraints, more dimensions. The last thing we need to add are 4 circles on the legs. So I'm going to add those. Okay. Now let's add some dimensions. Again, I always like to start with the one of the larger dimensions. So this needs to be 60 millimeters, because by adding another larger dimension, it'll scale everything. The first dimension will scale everything, and adding a larger dimension means that the outside is defined, and then you can slowly work your way towards smaller and smaller details. So the distance between the center point and this edge is 80. Let's move the legs, so let's move the circles back into place. I hit escape so I can start dragging things. Then I start dragging things. Okay. I go back to my dimensioning tool after I hit escape. This outside arc is 20 diameter, so since I'm in a radius dimension, I do 20 divided by 2. It sets it at 10. I click on liters and then I switch it over to diameter. And go back to my dimensioning tool. This one has a 12 millimeter radius. Okay. It looks like this bottom line here is 40 long. Just going clockwise around my drawing. The distance between the center point and the edge is 20 long. Okay. The distance between here and the center point of this circle is 10. And then the distance of this foot is 20. Okay. The distance between here and there is 10, as well as here and the edge is also 10. The distance between here and here is 30. And then each of these circles is 10 millimeters diameter. So that's all the dimensions in my drawing. Let's move some things around so that it looks a little bit better. Okay. So now let's add some relations. One of the obvious ones is that these 2 feet are offset, so I want them to be in line with each other. So I'm going to control click on both, hit collinear. The center point should be in line with this other center point, so I'm going to control click on the center point and the line, and I'm going to do coincident. Okay, let's see. What else needs to be done? I want to line up these circles. Well, first I want to make all these circles the same size, so I'm going to control click on all of them to add a relation to all 4 at once. I'm going to hit equal to make them the same size. I want them to be lined up, so I'm going to hit on 2 of the center points and make them horizontal to each other. Do the same down here. Oops, I clicked on the circle. So if I click on something extra, I can go up to selected entities and delete it up there if I don't want to control click on it again. But I want the center point, make it horizontal, make these 2 vertical, make these 2 vertical. Okay. And this line here, I at least want it to be symmetrical with this line below it. So I'm going to make those symmetric. So all symmetric does is it matches the angle. It doesn't actually match the entire line itself. Okay. And then going around, I want to make this guy, this point here, in line with this point. So maybe I'll make these 2 vertical. That's locked in part of this up here, which is nice. If I move, so this point here can move all the way like that, but I want it to be a smooth transition between this line and this arc. And so anytime you want a smooth transition, if you pick the 2 things you want to smooth out, if one is an arc and one is a line, the relation that smooths them is the tangent relation. That's locked in that side over there. That line doesn't move up and down, which is good. Doesn't move left and right. Doesn't move like that. That moved. So this arc can grow, which means that the thing that's wrong is from here to there. I want these 2 points to be lined up because I want it to be symmetric. And so I can make them vertical. And now my part's fully defined. Okay, sketch number 6. It's this one. Let's see. So just a little guy. The new thing is this angle dimension. The intersection of the center lines is, we can just use the center of the circle. So new sketch, front plane. Let's draw that circle. It looks like this arc does start at an end on a flat line. So we'll do a center point arc because we know where the center point is. First click is the center point, second click is the left side, right click is 180 degrees. I zoom out so that I have more space to work with. I open up my line tool, I click, I go down, I make its little leg. I'm making these 90 degrees already, but I don't have to. So like this guy, this perpendicular symbol showed up because I made it 90 degrees from this line to that line. But it doesn't have to be because we can always add that in later. Okay. And then bam. A little wonky, that's okay. I want to straighten out this line. Well, I guess so, and I guess we'll do relations first for this one. So center line, top down, and again it's arbitrary whether you do relations first or dimensions first. It is just a matter of how you like to flow as a designer. I want the insides of these legs to be symmetric, so we'll start with that. It's made it a little messy, so I'm just going to drag it downwards, drag it inwards. Let's add that perpendicular relation that I talked about earlier. A little messy again. Hit escape so I can start dragging. Okay, that's not so bad. Looks like these also need to be perpendicular. Okay. And then I want this one to move at the same equal to this one. So I'm gonna hit Control Z to not mess that up. Control click on these three. Hit symmetric. Nice. Okay. I want this point to be in line with this point, so I'm going to add horizontal. Okay. This is probably a decent point to start adding dimensions. So I'm going to dimension this outer arc, 30 diameter, divided by 2 gives me my radius, 15 millimeters. Use liters to switch it back to diameter. I measure the inside circle to be 25 diameter. All right, the angle dimension. So if I click on two lines that aren't parallel or perpendicular and are well, they don't even have to be connected necessarily. By clicking on the two lines, Smart Dimension knows that you want to make an angle dimension. So I'm going to plop that in. Since my drawing has the angle dimension, I want to leave that one in. So I'm going to leave it driving. And I'm going to look around and see what I have to delete to make this one the only place where this information is stored. And so I see these perpendiculars are highlighted yellow, so I'll delete it. It looks like that was it. Okay, so that's good for solving my problem. So let me keep dimensioning, see if anything else breaks. This line here is 25. Oops. So something's been overtrained again. Maybe let's start with the overall dimension. So from here to this corner, straight out to the right is 60. From here to the center point is 35. It looks like I've accidentally made it so that this arc is not halfway around. So I want to take this and the origin, oops, and make them horizontal to each other. Let's fix this guy by dragging. Okay. Maybe making these horizontal makes it so I can't put in the 25, or maybe it's something else. Let's see. Maybe it's this perpendicular that I added earlier. Nope. Well, we can always add it in and see what it breaks. Make it driving. Looks like it's this guy. So I delete horizontal. I had to hit escape. Sketch is still overdefined. There's two 60s for some reason. Oh, that was my fault. I wanted to make this line 25. Okay. Let's see. Maybe adding relations in wasn't the way to go. So if I do delete some of those, still no. Delete this guy. What is this? That's the problem. Why does this coincident with the origin? Okay, so now I can make this 135. I can add back in this horizontal relation that I deleted. So yeah, small things like that you have to watch out for. I accidentally had, maybe just by placing it, I made it so that this line had to intersect with the center. Or maybe I had it accidentally selected when I add coincident to something else. And that just messed up my ability to dimension properly. So let's add in these perpendiculars. Let's add back into the symmetry. Oops. Maybe I don't need the symmetry. Let's see what moves. So these points can be symmetric. Okay. This needs to be 12.5. Now that's locked in. This guy needs to be symmetric with that. That's too much. Nope. Let's see what else we can do. We can constrain these 2 points to be horizontal to each other. Now, honestly, let's just make it so that this corner point and that corner point are symmetric. Nope. What is this? I don't think these need to be parallel necessarily. Yeah, I don't know how that even got in there. So that one was the problem. Okay, cool. We're fully defined. So I'm gonna save this off, port 6, and then I'll do this last one, take a break, make a new video for the homework. Okay, sketch 7. Looks like this. Also kind of like a keychain kind of thing. Okay. We got some fillets, but mostly we have 90-degree lines. Looks like these two fillets are related to this one. because they don't have any extra information, so you just have to assume. Okay. So we make a sketch on the front plane. I'm just going to pick the bottom right corner to be the origin arbitrarily. And I'm going to make the general form. So I click on my line tool. I go up, I go over. And again, I don't care about the dimensions because the first dimension will scale everything to size. And I'm just clicking, making the staircase shape down here. Looks like I made that really narrow, but that's okay. Cool. That's at all the dimensions except for the fillets. Let's start with a bigger dimension. So from here to here is 44. This line is 22. From here to here is 36. Okay. From here to here is 4. From there to there is 10. From here to there, 16. And then let's see. From here to here is 25. From here to there is 30. From here to here is 5. This top line is 20. Okay. So, I mean, that's pretty much defined the whole object. All that's left is the fillets. So, actually, relatively easy. So, I'm going to put in the fillet dimension first. So you can kind of see right now the fillets are too large. So if I click this point, it says this fillet cannot be added because the specified radius would eliminate one of the elements. So I can see from the drawing that it's a 1.5 millimeter radius. I pick here. The preview shows up properly. There's 2 more, one on this corner, one on that corner. And I hit OK. And I'm done. Quick and easy. Alright, I'm going to take a break. I'll make another video for the homework drawings, and then hopefully this has helped with you making the parts for week 1. Thank you.